I changed my mind. I'm going to read here. Remembering and forgetting again. How could a memory system that discards so much of our experience have survived the rigors of evolution? Though human memory is subject to the distortion of memory reconstruction, if those subliminal distortions had proved seriously detrimental to our ancestors' survival, our memory system, or perhaps our species, would not have survived. Though our memory system is far from perfect, it is, in most situations, exactly what evolution requires. It is good enough. In fact, in the big picture, human memory is wonderfully efficient and accurate, sufficient to have enabled our ancestors to generally recognize the creatures they should avoid and those they should hunt down, where the best trout streams are, and the safest way back to camp. In modern terms, the starting point in understanding how memory works is Monsterberg's realization that the mind is continuously bombarded by a quantity of data so vast that it cannot possibly handle all of it. The roughly 11 million bits per second I mentioned in the last chapter. And so we have traded perfect recall for the ability to handle and process that staggering amount of information. Staggering amount of information. Indeed. That's why humans take pictures, film videos, and write words. Write essays, personal reflections. To keep our memory relatively alive. Although you are going to just remember one or two interpretations, and those are not the reality itself. You can never capture reality, even with the best camera. With 8K resolution, you cannot capture the reality itself, because reality cannot be captured from just one perspective and one take. It is something you feel, and not just about feeling, but more like visual, lots of dimensions, and human brain cannot even wrap around it. All right, let me continue here. When we hold a baby's birthday party in the park, we experience 2 intense hours of sights and sounds. If we crammed all of them into memory, we'd soon have a huge warehouse of smiles, frosting mustache, and poopy diapers. Important aspects of the experience would be stored amid irrelevant clutter, such as the patterns of color on each mother's blouse, the small talk made by each dad, the cries and screams of every child present, and the steadily growing number of ants on the picnic table. The truth is, you don't care about the ants or the small talk, and you don't want to remember everything. The challenge that the mind faces and that the unconscious meets is to be able to sift through this inventory of data in order to retain the parts that actually do matter to you. If the sifting doesn't occur, you just get lost in the data dump. You see the trees but not the forest. There is, in fact, a famous study that illustrates the downside of an unfiltered memory, a case study of an individual who had such a memory. The study was performed over the course of 30 years, starting in the 1920s, by the Russian psychologist A.R. Luria. The man who couldn't forget was a famed, I don't know how to say this word.
Which one? Wow, Dollar, do you know that?
Mnemonist named Solomon Shereshevsky. Shereshevsky apparently remembered in great detail everything that happened to him. Once Luria asked Shereshevsky to recount their initial meeting, Shereshevsky recalled that they were in Luria's apartment and described exactly what the furniture looked like and what Luria was wearing. Then he recited without error the list of 70 words that 15 years earlier Luria had read aloud and asked him to repeat. The downside of Shereshevsky's flawless memory was that the details often got in the way of understanding. For instance, Shereshevsky had great trouble recognizing faces. Most of us store in memory the general features of the faces we remember, and when we see someone we know, we identify the person by matching the face we are looking at to a face in that limited catalog. But Shereshevsky's memory housed a great many versions of every face he had ever seen. To Shereshevsky, each time a face changed its expression or was seen in different lighting, it was a new face. That's so insane. I can't imagine that. Every facial expression is remembered differently as a different person. Can you believe that? Even his wife or his mom, he can't remember them. He can't recognize his mom because his mom's facial expression change or clothes change. Matching that person's face to the faces stored in his memory meant performing a search of vast inventory of images to try to find an exact equivalent to what he was seeing. Shereshevsky had similar problems with language. If you spoke to him, though he could always play back your exact words, he had trouble understanding your point. The comparison with language is apt because this is another trees and forest problem. Linguists recognize two types of language structure: surface structure and deep structure. Surface structure refers to the specific way an idea is expressed, such as the words used and their order. Deep structure refers to the gist of the idea. Most of us avoid the problems of clutter by retaining the gist but freely discarding details. As a result, although we can retain deep structure, the meaning of what was said, for long periods of time, we can accurately remember surface structure, the words in which it was said, for just 8 to 10 seconds. Wow, yes, indeed. I often just forgot what I myself said. Shereshevsky apparently had an exact and long-lasting memory of all the details of the surface structure, but those details interfered with his ability to extract the gist of what was being said. His inability to forget the irrelevant became so frustrating that at times he would write things down on paper and then burn the page, hoping his memory of them would also go up in flames. It didn't work. Read the following list of words and please pay careful attention: candy, sour, sugar, bitter, good, test, tooth, nice, honey, soda, chocolate, heart, cake, eat, and pie. If you read only the first few words carefully and then skimmed the rest because you lack patience and feel silly allowing yourself to be ordered around by a book, please reconsider. It is important. Please read through the list, study it for half a minute. Now cover the list so you can see the words, and keep it covered while you read the next paragraph. If you are Shereshevsky, you all have no trouble recalling all the words on the list, but chances are your memory works a bit differently. In fact, I have given the little exercise I'm about to give you to a dozen groups over the years, and the result is always the same. I'll tell you the punchline after I explain the exercise. It is simple. Just identify which of the following 3 words appeared on the above list: taste, point, sweet. Your answer doesn't have to be just one word. Perhaps all of them were listed, or none of them. Please give this some thought. Assess each word carefully. Can you picture seeing it on the list? Are you confident? Don't choose a word as being on the list unless you are sure of it and can picture it there. Please settle on your answer. Now please uncover the list in the previous paragraph and see how you did. I think I definitely saw taste. Sweet. Yeah, point, I didn't. Yeah. I think, I didn't see sweet. Okay. I didn't. But I did see test. That's interesting. Because I've seen lots of things that were sweet. So The vast majority of people recall with great confidence that point was not on the list. The majority also recall that test was. The punchline of the exercise has to do with the other word, sweet. If you record seeing the word, it is an illustration of the fact that your memory is based on your recollection of the gist of the list you saw and not the actual list. The word sweet was not on the list, but most of the words on the list were related thematically to the concept of sweetness. The memory researcher Daniel Scatcher wrote that he gave tests like this to many audiences, and the great majority of people claimed that sweet was on the list, even though it was not. I have also given this test to many large groups, and while I did not find a great majority remembering that sweet was on the list, I did consistently get about half of my audience claiming it was, about the same number who correctly recalled that test was on it. That result was consistent across many cities and countries. The difference between my results and sketches may stem from the way I phrased the question. For I always stress that people should not designate a word unless they are sure, unless they can picture the list and vividly see that word is on it. Our process of remembering can be said to be analogous to the way computers store images, except that our memories have the added complexity that the memory data we store changes over time. We'll get to that later. In computers, to save storage space, images are often highly compressed, meaning that only certain key attributes of the original image are kept. This technique can reduce the file size from megabytes to kilobytes. When the image is viewed, the computer predicts from the limited information in the compressed file what the original image looked like. If we view a small thumbnail sized image made from a highly compressed data file, it usually looks very much like the original. But if we blow the image up, if we look closely at the details, we see many arrows, blocks and bands of solid color where the software guessed wrong and the missing details were incorrectly filled in. Yep. Amazing. I loved it. This part taught me again about humans' memory are flawed. Don't trust them completely. Even you feel so certain about them, some memories, and you might be tricked by your own mind. Alright, I'm going to take a shower and get ready to leave home. 停止录像。